This episode is brought to you by Cube Gallery. Cube Gallery is a progressive art space in Cebu, Philippines, providing network and exhibit opportunities for contemporary artists with whom they work closely with and promote beyond the local reach. For more than 5 years, the gallery has progressively mounted shows of engaging artworks and have also significantly represented the Visayas region in various international fairs. Aside from its physical space in Crossroads, Banilad, Cebu City, you can check out their online collection on artsy.net/cube-gallery. Link in the show notes. This month at Cube, Ink Notion by O.J. Hoffer. Renowned Cebuano fashion designer and visual artist O.J. Hoffer will be featuring his Japanese calligraphy in a show entitled Ink Notion. It'll run from November 22 to December 6 at Cube Gallery. Hoffer's study of Japanese calligraphy and ink painting began almost a decade ago. He has mounted several one-man shows in this genre of art. Ink Notion highlights O.J. Hoffer's ink artworks such as kanji and hiragana calligraphy in the 5 traditional styles: humorous Zen drawings, converging Enso circles, and transfixing ink on abaca bas relief. Catch the show at Cube Gallery. Okay, let's get to the show. Welcome to 032 Conversations, the podcast where we talk to creatives, see how they live, and how they do their work. I'm your host, Carlo Villarica. I'd like to start the show with a heartfelt condolence to Sheila, the wife of Brian Sacro. As of this recording, I learned that Brian Sacro passed away this morning. And he was a really important part of the music community. He was well loved. I'm sorry to see him go. In fact, Brian Sacro mixed my band, Rescue Heroes album. So we were very grateful for him. We're very grateful to him. And I just wanted to share one of my earlier memories of Brian. Back in the day, Brian was this bassist god. He was this guy that we looked up to. He played with all these great bands. He was a really good bassist. And I remember one particular instance. We were in this convenience store across STC, and it was me and my cousin. And for some reason, we were sitting, just the three of us with Brian. I think we were drinking. I'm not sure. It may have been like Lambanog or something back in the day. And Brian was so generous. He probably never. This is probably the first time I ever spoke to Brian. And he sat with us for what felt like a couple of hours. And he was literally teaching us music. I probably barely knew how to play the guitar back then. My cousin didn't know either. And he was talking about scales, talking about the music scene, talking about being in a band. And then me and my cousin, we were in high school at the time. We were just soaking it in. And I just wanted to share that as this memory. Brian was a really important part of my musical journey, and I'm sorry to see him go. But he lived a full life. He had an impact on thousands of people. So condolence to Sheila and Brian's family as well. Sorry to see him go. So over the weekend, over the weekend, the Rotary Club of Cebu organized this around Cebu ride called the En Polio Cebu 2019. So I first saw it when Bernard Von Sia, he posted something on Facebook. They were going to ride around Cebu, around the perimeter of Cebu, around the coastal roads. And once I saw that, I was like, oh, I need to do this. This is a ride that I've been wanting to do ever since I started cycling. Basically, you go around the whole Cebu island through the coastal roads, and it's like 500 plus kilometers of riding. In the end, we ended up doing like 572 kilometers. So from Cebu City, first we did it in 3 days. The first day was from Cebu City all the way down to Santander and then up to Moalboal. Then the second day was Mall Ball up to Daan Bantayan. And then the third day, Daan Bantayan down to Cebu City. And then along the way, because this is an end polio ride, so the purpose of this ride was to raise awareness and raise money to protect Cebu, well, to end polio all over the world, really. So what we did was we rode around Cebu, and then we stopped. I think we did like 3 or 4 stops, and then the Rotary Club did vaccinations in those areas. So I think in the end we must have vaccinated. They must have vaccinated like 100+ kids. I was just a rider, I was just happy to be there as a cyclist doing a ride just to raise awareness. And yeah, it was really fun. 572 kilometers of, the kind of fun where it's really painful, and then after it, there's a name for this, but after you do the fun, it's really painful at that moment, but then after, it's something that you're probably never gonna forget, right? I mean, like the aside from the ride, a few highlights was the camaraderie of all the cyclists. I believe we're like 20+ cyclists who did it all over the weekend. We did it together. And then, of course, another highlight was the happy faces and the vaccinations. A lot of the mothers of these kids brought their kids to have the polio vaccine. I don't know the technical term really, but they were all happy there. And then the other highlight was really, Cebu as a whole. Like, so many friendly people, as well as like very specific sections that I enjoyed. I'm sure there was a lot more areas that were really beautiful, but there were times during the ride where I was just putting my head down, going hard, because that's fun to do. But there were definitely highlights like that. There's a section in San Remio where there's this long stretch of road and then rice fields on the left and right. That was beautiful. That particular spot, we were there as soon as the sun rose on sunrise. So it was lovely. It was wonderful. One of the really great place. And then, of course, there was Barili also, going up those mountains in Barili and then looking to the right and just seeing the landscape. That was wonderful. And then, of course, the Cebu coastal roads, in particular, like the southwest area of Cebu, where there weren't too many cars. That whole ride was an experience. So thank you, Rotary Club of Cebu, for organizing that and having me along. That was good. I'm still high from the ride. My legs are still sore. It's hard to go up and down stairs. I'll tell you that. It's so hard. If you're a long-time listener of the show, consider going to assembly.032.com. You might like some of the 032 merchandise. We have some new shirts posted there. And if you like anything 032, you can just use the promo code CONVERSATIONS for 20% off. I'll put a link in the show notes. And on this episode of 032 Conversations, I interviewed Hannah Martinez-Florendo. After my wife and I had kids, we've seen Hannah more and more often, just because like our kids are kind of the same age. And then also, Hannah runs this art school called Artastic, and Manu, my firstborn, took art classes there and he really enjoyed it. It was a fun experience every time he'd come home with like a little piece of artwork. But more importantly, he enjoyed doing whatever it was that they were doing in that class on that particular day. So Hannah owns it. She teaches in it. I particularly wanted to talk to her after I heard her speak in the Tropical Futures Forum, because she was talking about her thoughts on school and in particular this guy Ken Robinson. So she's great. We talked to her about school and about a bunch of other things. And it's important to me because I have kids and I struggled in school. Apparently so did she. So we talked about it. But before we get to that interview, if this is your first time to listen to 032 Conversations, please subscribe. We have a new episode every Tuesday. Okay, let's get to that interview.
About 2 years now.
2 years?
Yeah, a little over 2 years.
And then what, you didn't like You didn't have any background with it
No,
whatsoever?
no, nothing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And then why did you want to start?
Laura and I went to Yosemite.
Oh.
Yeah. So, that's the climbing mecca, right? In the States. And it was, really beautiful. It was so nice. So, we kind of, looked up, climbing, because we realized, people do that here too. So, why not? Because the end goal was supposed to be and then we can go back and climb into Yosemite. Then, so when we came back and we tried it out in Metro Sports, it turned out that Laura didn't like climbing very
Really?
much, and I was the one who went crazy about it.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that he didn't like it.
He now he does it. He has shoes and the gear, but then he doesn't. I think he mostly does it because I'm really crazy about it, and it's something fun we can do together.
Yeah.
But he's not
He won't go without you.
no, not he probably would as a workout, but not I want to get stoned and not that the way he feels about other things. Because Laura's a sporty guy,
Yeah,
right?
I know. That's why I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's not the same way he feels about surfing or cycling and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm just curious. So how come wala lang? It just didn't touch him the same way.
No, it did. I mean, you can't love everything at the level. Yeah. So not with climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that where you got into, why did you like it?
I think it's because I grew up not into sports, so I'm not very good at any sport. And so when I discovered that I like climbing and I had I'm not great professional level, but I can climb.
You can't. It didn't come it wasn't so. It wasn't as difficult as you thought it would be in the beginning.
Yeah, and I could I discovered that I did have the ability to climb well. So I don't know, I think I never experienced that feeling in sports ever.
Really? It just came easy?
I mean, not that way. So it's hard to describe. That, I mean, you do sports. When you first started, say, cycling and you discovered, hey, this is cool, I can do it.
Yeah.
And it just makes you want to do it more, right? I've never had that because I never, in high school, no sports, college, nothing.
Really?
The closest I ever did that was related to sports is maybe diving. I mean, that's not even really considered a sport,
Is
right?
it? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
It's recreational,
yeah.
really. But so, with climbing, it was really it's a sport that I can do and not really trip me out. So, yeah.
So, diba, a few weeks ago, you went. What is that spot? I'll see pictures of it.
Poog.
Poog?
Yeah,
Where's that?
It's in they're all in Toledo.
Mm.
So it turns out that Cebu is really people come from all over the world to climb our crags.
What's a crag?
A crag is a climbable wall.
Ah, okay.
Because you can't climb, there's certain types of surfaces that you can't climb on. Some surfaces are you know how some areas used to be underwater, so it's coral.
Okay.
Exposed coral, and that's really sharp, so that's not climbable.
Ah, okay.
So here in Cebu, we happen to have a lot of limestone walls, which are really good for climbing. And not all places in the Philippines have that. In the States, in Manila, you have to drive 4 hours just to get to a climbable wall. Here, it's an hour and a half. So we're really spoiled. I think climbing is such an underrated sport here that there's a huge market for and nobody does.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's such a small community, ba?
Yeah, I went with. She was. I think was she your guide? Si Lilay.
Lilay is Oh my gosh, she's really great.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I went cycling with her once.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that. I was like, wow, is there anything she can't do?
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's an amazing climber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How how do you know if you're good at climbing? Like you can how does one, define that ba? Like, like let's say basketball,
Yeah,
you can
well-
put the hoop in the hole
Climbing
fairly
is
quickly.
well, I think the first thing is that you have to get over is the height.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that like holds a lot of people back. But then the thing there is like you have equipment. Like the worst thing that can happen if you fall is you just kind of dangle there. So I did have to get over that. Even in the gym, like my hands would start to get like sweaty when I look down and I realize like shoot, I'm at a height that if I fall I die, right?
Oh yeah.
Also, like when you climb, it's not just about going up and down, although you can do that for like stamina, just to be able to like stay up on a wall. They have these things called like roots. So
Sorry?
roots.
Roots?
Yeah, so like there are holds all over the gym, right?
yeah, okay.
And then they tell you like, okay, this is route, let's name it 032 route. And so they pick which holds you're only allowed to.
Ah, okay.
So then it becomes a puzzle. Like, how do I get to the top holding only these routes?
Ah, okay. So it's like almost like a trail in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a trail. And they do that because when you're out in the real crag, it's the same. Like, it's not like the gym where there's like obvious holds to hold. It's kind of training for like when you go to a wall and you want to get up, you kind of have to study like how to get there. So like if you train well in the gym doing routes, it's easier for you to figure out how to get to the top.
What was the place called? Pog?
Yeah.
How do you? So you drive up there to Toledo,
Mm-hmm.
and then what? You have to hike to the.
No. I mean, you hike. Noah went with us. It's like
Okay.
It's like a less than 10-minute walk. It's
Noah,
not really.
your kid.
Yeah, Noah, my kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, but then there's different. Like in climbing, there's a lot of things you can do. Like there's like this thing called bouldering where like you just do that. Like that's all they focus on. Just like the puzzle part, like figuring out how to do routes. And then there's sport climbing where you just like climb like up and down pretty much. It's about like getting up fast. Yeah.
That's
And
the one
then-
that you can see like videos of, like just people just rushing up.
Yeah.
diba?
And then there's like the people who just like climbing outdoors, which I really like. Yeah.
The bouldering, diba that's different? Diba that's
Bouldering
like,
it's not about going up. It's pretty like low. They stay at the. Okay, like bouldering came from like boulders. So like back in the day, people would just climb boulders to get to the top. But like boulders are different from crags in that they're shaped like the rocks. They're big rocks. So the holds you have to like the maneuvering to get to the top of a boulder is very different from maneuvering like
climb up a wall.
yeah.
Diba bouldering, there's not much bouldering here though in Cebu, diba?
Like natural walls.
Yeah.
No. There's like I think one or two, but they're not very popular. Like
okay.
I haven't really. I know there's one in Liloan and one in Tagbao.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I remember like a friend of mine. Do you know Jeremy? Jeremy Lim? He's our bassist. And then he lives now in San Francisco, and for fun,
He boulders.
him and his wife,
Oh,
they
that's awesome.
boulder.
Yeah.
So when he was here like a month ago,
Yeah.
he asked me if na mga bouldering spots. Of course, I have no idea.
Well, if you go to a crag, you can boulder in the lower part.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go up. But then like the boulder you'd like
I think he was looking for that.
Yeah, no, not too much. Not too many. I haven't seen the ones here yet.
Molagi, that's
Yeah.
what he wanted to get to.
But I'm
to
sure
do.
there are. And it's kind of crazy, like I was saying how small the community is. okay, so like in crags, there are bolts, right? Like metal bolts that you have to
Ah, yeah.
tie. It's really only the climbers that maintain it. They're not like paid by a org or the government. Like they do it just, so people can still climb, so that they can still climb like safely. There's this one. You should get him on the podcast.
What's his name?
Merville Patigdas.
Okay.
He is like single-handedly trying to keep the climbing community alive.
Merville Patigdas.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
like he runs Grit Gravity. So every time we climb, he's our guy. Like I trust him. Like the belayer, your belayer, literally has their lives in their
Belair is the person like on the bottom.
who like holds
holding
you
the-
up. Yeah, so like if you fall, that's the person who's holding the rope.
Hmm.
So I am super picky. Like I will not climb with a belayer that I don't know personally. So Merville is the guy who we've been climbing with like all the time outdoors. Like he's really legit. He works in Hong Kong. He's like back and forth. He got his certs there. Like very technical, like dependable guy. So like yeah, the belayer is just as important. And he got certified with like how to change the bolts because it's metal. Like after a while it rusts. Like it has to be maintained.
Hmm.
And he's like one of the only guys who does it
Regularly here in Cebu.
regularly. Yeah,
In that spot.
both spots, Poog and Cantabaco is the other one.
It's also in Toledo.
Also in Toledo.
Oh.
It's like world class climbing walls.
But if you're just practicing here in the city,
We go Metro Sports.
Metro Sports, is
Yeah.
that the only one here?
At the moment, like there's rumors about like climbing gyms gonna be put up. Yeah, but like
You know, my relative just put up a climbing gym in Manila, in Fort. I'm blanking
is
on
that
the
the
name.
same one Ayla's been talking about? Maybe she said like her tito invested in a climbing.
Oh yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I've seen pictures like white walls. I guess, and then like really
Manila's
colorful.
it's just like it's so annoying. They have like really nice facilities for climbing.
You know, they looked at Cebu if they were gonna open it here, and they weren't sure if.
They should like I said, right? In Manila, you have to drive like really far to climb. Here, it's an hour and a half away. We're so spoiled. Like nobody
yeah?
does it. Yeah.
Oh. I've seen pictures. It looks really nice.
It is like
It's like you guys made a day out of it, pag yun, like while you're climbing, Noah's there just
Yeah.
playing. And then
Yeah.
I can imagine Lore just sitting there.
he climbed too,
Yeah, no, but like,
Yeah.
kind of while just waiting, but like, maybe even drinking a beer. or
Yeah.
something.
But yeah, that's a nice thing about that too. Like when you climb, since there's like a lot of downtime, like waiting for your turn, you just like talk, eat, like hang out.
Like a picnic.
Like
ba?
a picnic, yeah, exactly. It's really awesome. It's like I can see the appeal right away. Like with my first climb, like this is why people get obsessed with climbing like outdoors.
I think it's like the lens I'm looking at it is from, of course, like from cycling, but I think it's also like a matter of like you're just number one, you're outdoors, and then you're kind of just focused on that thing, and then there's no one calling you, there's no notification on a screen.
Yeah,
It's just you're in that zone, but you're like in a flow state of some sort.
yeah.
No. Well, anyway, I also wanted to make sure we talked about the, your a little bit about your talk, no?
Yeah.
So in your talk you mentioned about like school. No, can we talk about your school background a little bit? Like in your talk, you said like you took fine arts.
Yeah, I took fine arts for 3 years, and then I got like cold feet. Like I started worrying about my future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's why you graduated as
HRM.
HRM.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you said. So yeah, in your talk you said like back in the day, if you took fine arts, they looked at you like an alien.
Yeah. Or it was
Yeah.
like, oh, she's in fine arts. Like, I wonder what she failed at. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh.
people in fine arts were generally classified as, like, lazy people or, like, weird or, like, people that, like, flunked the course and so, like, had to take a easy way out.
Yeah, but if you look at today, like a lot of, let's say, like freelance work
Yeah.
with like has to do with graphic design,
Yeah.
video,
Yeah.
whatever. It's
Yeah.
all fine arts, quote unquote.
Yeah. Definitely, I think it's a good time to be in the creative industry, I think, now.
Because compared to before.
Compared to before.
Can we
Absolutely.
talk about that? So like you took it for 3 years.
Yeah.
Nyawat lang, anong murag,
I just, okay, like, my sister took fine arts. I have an older sister. She's 5 years older than me, and she took fine arts too. So she graduated exactly the same course, advertising. I remember one day she came home like crying, and I was like, "What's wrong? Like, why are you so upset?" She was working already with Kaloy, right?
Lupanko?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His dad had a ad firm. I think it was called Camp Cebu or something. One of the
or
very first.
campaigns?
Camp,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
She worked there after having graduated fine arts, and so she came home from work like really upset, like crying. And I was like, "What's wrong? Like, why are you so upset?" She's like, "Oh, I had to make like work stressing me out. Like, I had to make an ad campaign for like alcohol." I'm like, "Okay, doesn't sound so bad." And she's like, "But it was binakulafu, and I had to do it in Bisaya." So I was really like, "Oh my god." She's like, "I don't think I can do this anymore." And like, I really remember like that freaked me out because she had like a whole like crisis, like career crisis, and like in the end, she went back to school and became a teacher.
Hmm.
So, Chess, my older sister, actually has a lot to do with my decision about like teaching art as well. Because she was an art teacher, but she didn't put up her own thing. Like she worked with like bigger schools, so she did give me like a lot of insight and like help and advice with what I did with Artastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanna make sure we get to Artastic, and but when you were in school, because I know in your talk you also mentioned Ken Robinson.
Yeah.
And he talks about like the purpose of school in the beginning, and how school was actually made in a way school was made to teach obedience.
Yeah.
How it was a way to get people uh, to to be basically factory workers. This
Yeah.
was, I don't know, 50 years ago,
Um,
70 years ago, something like
around
that.
Industrial Revolution
Yeah,
time. So I'd say like 1920s.
1920s.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have that sense? Basically, I'm asking, how did you do in school?
Really horribly. Like, I get so emotional talking about this because
About school?
I think I was traumatized by the whole thing.
Why? Though, just to give you some context, so like, I don't think the reason why it struck me was because like I didn't do well in school.
Yeah.
Like when I was in high school, I just floated my way into passing everything
Yeah.
except Filipino, which I actually really had to work really hard for. But
Yeah.
um, but once I reached college, I I realized, oh wait, I have to work for this.
Yeah.
So in fact, my first year in college, I almost flunked out because it was hard. Like I didn't
Where'd you go
know
to college, Gani?
Ateneo
Oh,
in
wow.
Manila, and then
Yeah, that
you
is
know,
like the icon of the academe. I can
I
imagine.
guess I don't know. Like at the time,
Here in the Philippines.
it was just. I mean, what me, but like going there,
Yeah.
it was nice to experience, but I felt very quickly, Amurag, that I don't think school was for me ba
Yeah.
nga, like I had an English teacher, and then nothing against my other teachers. This is just the system. Like
Yeah.
the I worked really hard on this essay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then and I was like, oh, I got a C, and then I don't know why.
Yeah.
Now I just said, okay, after that C, I was like, I guess I'm just not good at writing,
Yeah.
or.
Yeah.
And then, so I just don't feel like school was for me, and it does work for some people,
Yeah.
diba? So I don't know, how was your experience in school?
It was, yeah, like I said, I didn't do well. It was really like I knew I wasn't dumb. Like I knew that I wasn't like stupid or anything. And then my
Yeah,
frustration
that's good
was
for
like,
you.
no, I mean, like I don't think anyone is stupid, really.
No, I understand. No, I meant like good for you at that age, but when you were in college, because I can tell you. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna cut off your story, but there was a point in my zoology class.
Yeah.
Because in high school, I'd get a grade and it'd be low. And I just looked to my right. I'm like, okay, at least I have a higher grade than this guy. And then I went to college. I was in a zoology class. I looked at my score, and then I looked around, and I'm like, shit, I think I have the lowest grade in this class.
Yeah, I mean, like, even that, like, the whole, like, testing and scoring, and, like, it turns the spotlight away from, like, what you've actually learned to, like, the score that you get, which is, like, completely, like, for me, perverse. Like, I remember, like, studying because I wanted to get a grade and not studying because I wanted to absorb what I was studying. And so, like, I think that's a really... I mean, it's like basically you squandered 9 years of your life trying to get high scores. And like,
for
what
what?
did you get out of it? You know what I mean? So, yeah, like, and that was so stressful for me. I mean, it's like hard enough being like a teenager, like in a huge school, like dealing with hormones and stuff, and then having to worry about grades. It like just I don't know. And I think a lot of people feel the same way
Yeah, I'm sure.
because like my close knit friends, we like our highlight of school was like making friends, like finding lifelong friends, and like I feel like in the end, what I learned from school wasn't like the lessons being taught in the classroom. Like I think I learned resourcefulness because I was doing really bad, and my parents weren't the type of people who were like, "Oh, you're failing. Let's get you a tutor." They like just school's your thing. Figure it out.
Oh, okay, really?
Yeah. So I had to find a way, like
I think that's good though. I mean,
yeah. In
diba?
the end, yeah, like.
At that moment, probably
Yeah.
not. But
Well, I didn't resent them also for not. Like, it just also made sense to me. Like, this is my, like, it's my responsibility to find a way to pass. So I, like, I didn't for a second think of ever, like, having to go to my mom and dad and being like, I'm failing, can you help me? It was always something, like, I took upon myself to do. So yeah, like, I had to I'd like talk to friends, like, hey, can you help me with this? Like, I'm struggling here, or like talk to a teacher, or just like that for me is a number one thing I learned, like coming out of a school like that was like being resourceful, and like if I had a problem, finding ways to like solve it.
yeah, why do you think you were struggling in the first place?
I
Because
just
as you know,
I think it was just the obsession with getting a high grade. I mean, like
yeah.
now that like looking back, our passing in the school I went to was like 80% of a test. And even at 80%, I wasn't exactly thrilled because like the benchmark for having a good grade was 90% and up.
So you were struggling from like kanang you had a higher standard basically
Yeah.
because you wanted like a good,
Yeah, I mean,
you wanted a score.
Of course, because like there's report cards, and these report cards are, shown to your parents, and like they tell you that like this determines the kind of life that you have after high
Which
school.
is not true.
Yeah, which is my gosh. So it really like it was so like school was a very stressful time for me, and I didn't enjoy it the way I wish I did. Like I think if it were a different setting maybe, or like in with what Ken Robinson was saying, like if like other things were celebrated or like considered worth taking up aside from like the usual math, science, whatever, then like, maybe I would have like enjoyed school more. But yeah, I was when I was done with it, I was just like, it's done, thank God, on to the next. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember my last exam in Ateneo,
Yeah,
and then it was an oral exam,
yeah,
and then I forgot what subject it was. I think it was like philo or something. And
yeah.
then I just sat there, just in front of the teacher. I had this big grin on my face. Then he finally asked me, "Why do you keep smiling?" I was like, "Sir, this is my last exam."
I don't ever have to do this ever
Yeah,
again.
this is basically my last day of college. I am so happy right now.
Yeah, which is sad because like you spend a big chunk of your life in schools, like by the time I was done with college, I was 26.
Really?
Yeah, because of all the shifting
Yeah, okay.
so can you imagine like the things, like I don't want to think about it, but like the things that I could have done and learned in 26 years breaks my heart. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what Ken Robinson, just to give some context, like what he talks about? I think you would do a better job than I would about schools.
Yeah, so he did research and like he read papers and all of that, and like he's a professor, so it's his job to do these things. Basically he's saying that like our school systems were invented for the Industrial Revolution and to fill the needs of that era. So like there were buildings being built, and like there was like a boom in like the industry, right? Like factories and all of that. So like before that it was mostly agriculture. Like people lived in like the outskirts and they farmed and whatnot. So all of a sudden there's like this huge influx of people going into cities, working in factories, working in construction, and so governments basically said like, okay, we need more people we need more workers. So they built school systems to kind of weed out like, okay, here are the workers and here are like the more like this quote unquote like more intelligent people that we need to like design the buildings or whatever. So schools were created to like pretty much condition people to be able to work in the workforce after, which is why like it's kind of creepy actually. Like if you think about schools now, they're actually modeled after factories. Like I didn't even realize this, but like bells, you know how like when a subject's done and then the bell rings,
Oh
that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
very factory setting.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Also, segregating kids by age is like turning out to be not actually a very practical thing to do. Like he says that like why in the world would you think that like a group of kids would only have their age in common? Like it's the same as like manufacture dates. So like manufactured in 1986, we're gonna
Yeah.
put you all in this class, but like they're so like people learn differently, so now they're seeing that, oh, maybe it's better to group kids by learning ability, not necessarily by age.
And by age is how they do it here in the Philippines.
Like globally. pretty
Oh
much.
yeah. Well, no, but like they made it a lot stricter
Here,
now. Like, di ba, I don't know. Before, back in the day, you would have classmates who would be accelerated,
yeah,
or so you'd have somebody who's like a year older, 2 years
yeah,
older, or sorry, younger,
yeah,
and then and also older. And then now it's very strict. Now
yeah.
it's like
Oh,
purely
oh
by
yeah,
age.
because of like the K-12 thing also,
I think
right?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what else? Also segregating by subject isn't actually like having a this is the math room, the science room, the that's also a very like that's something tailored after factories.
Yeah. So like
So
the
every
product, quote unquote product, the students are the ones being
yes,
moved from production area to production area.
exactly. So there and then testing is just a way of like standardizing, like making sure that everyone learns the same things. Um, then also like if you fail, you're either like kicked out or reprocessed. That's the same thing as in a factory. If you have a defective product, it's discarded or reprocessed. So it's they're trying to do what like manufacturing products is to people. And that's like absurd. People are different.
Yeah, I think also the context. Obviously, we've gotten a lot out of that system,
Yeah.
diba? Because right now we're in a building. We all have cars,
Yeah. Yes.
roads. I don't know, computers. These are all made
Yeah.
by factories in some way or another. But the thing is, this is the same system that we were using. So you said 1920. So basically 100 years ago.
Yeah, which when I started reading about this, I was like, oh my god, like this doesn't even, I think, carry. I mean, it's not just schools, it could be everything like hospitals, governments, supermarkets. Like, I think there's really something, there should really be, like, people shouldn't just go on with their lives because that's how it's always been and this is how it's always gonna be. Like, there's really, I think, some value in always like questioning institutions and if they're like still relevant. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, even so I read a lot. Like I read Ken Robinson's whole book on this.
What's the name of the book?
Creative Schools was what I read. He has several, but that's the first one I read. And even a simple thing like how the school itself is built, um, there's so much room for change. Like classrooms, the way classrooms are arranged already tells you the kind of institution it is, right? So imagine if schools were okay, like imagine if instead of like classrooms where people go to the classrooms, what if you could reimagine a school, like the space itself differently? Like what if you had like a center area where like all kids are and they could like venture off to different areas and like this is like the math area and I can come here and
Because they want to do
because
it.
they want to and it can like they can cross over to a different discipline and mix math and art. Like it doesn't have to be so structured and
And rigid.
segregated.
Oh, and
Yeah.
segregated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean and that like translates not just the like the system but the architecture itself, you know, has I think a really well he argues a really like big impact on how people like learn and perceive education.
Other countries, because it's my belief also that we're kind of. I could be wrong, but I think we're in that space now where, especially with the internet, there's gonna be a lot of people questioning whether they even need to go to school.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. This is
Yeah.
my perception. But for example, like my kids,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna want to go to college, diba?
Yeah.
And if they don't, me personally, my wife may disagree. But like if they don't want to,
Yeah,
whatever, diba?
Laura and I had this exact conversation because Noah, my son, who's turning 4 in February. He's like coming of age already, where we have to start making decisions about his schooling. And like after everything that I've learned, I am so scared of sticking him into a school. Like we have considered homeschooling him.
And there's a lot of people who do that.
Yeah. And so Laura has a project in Siargao, and it looks like we're gonna be like back and forth. I mean, it's in the cards. Like it's a real,
possibility.
yeah, it's a big possibility. And he happened to meet this group of guys from Siargao. Like they're all golfers, so they played golf with Laura when they were here in Cebu. And they're like the original dudes that like discovered Siargao. Like these are the guys who own like property in Cloud9. Like they were there before it was popular. So they've raised their families in Siargao. And so he was really asking them like, how on earth did you get them like their schooling? How did it happen?
How old are the kids now?
Big na, like 18.
Okay.
Like they're adults now. And so they were saying like, we didn't worry so much about the academic part. Like, I wasn't, like, they weren't obsessed with the idea of their kids becoming doctors or lawyers or whatever. Like, if it turned out that they wanted to go in that direction, they would have, like, supported it. But they just wanted their kids to be good people, and that turned out really well for them. Like, they found a way around it without having to like put them in a
in an institution.
In an institution.
Have you met the kids?
That's a good question. No, I have not. But I do know a lot of people who have skipped institutions entirely. Like the Mirandas are really good examples.
Oh yeah.
They were all
Homeschooled.
homeschooled, and they are all really like amazing. Like the one's a pilot. They're
we were when we were in Dumaguete, we visited Rafa's.
Yeah, Rafa runs Victoria
Victoria.
really well, I might add. Like, and that just proves that, like, maybe you don't need an institution to, like, well...
That's true, though, because I remember their oldest, I'm blanking on his name, he went to Sacred Heart for a while.
Yeah.
And then I think his parents, they pulled him out. And then, but kind of homeschooled sila, and
yeah.
okay,
I mean,
good.
I'm also not saying that this should be the norm. No?
Yeah.
Like,
But you're looking at alternatives.
Yeah, alternatives.
So have you guys decided, like, for Noah?
I've
had this conversation with Steph, like because in a way, you have a more nuanced view about school than I do. But I am aware of the whole school problem, and then the fact is, if you look at the schools in Cebu, they're everything you have described.
Not all. There are a few gems.
No, but like high schools.
Yeah.
Like once you get to, because there's a lot of like smaller.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of these smaller schools for the toddlers. They're quite nice.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, I kind of figured if we can like keep Noah early and like make sure that he has his like values and character straight in the formative years, but in high school when he can be inside an institution but be able to think for himself, then that might work out. So we we haven't decided on this yet. It's just something we discussed. Like maybe if we like homeschool him or keep him in a smaller school and make sure that like he's ready to be
Quote,
put
unquote.
in a big school, then that might work out for him.
I'm curious to see what you guys do. I'll be honest with you, like I'm kind of just resigned.
It's scary, right?
Yeah.
It's so scary.
It is. I'm kind of resigned to it, I'll be honest with you, Ngamurag.
Well, let's just...
Yeah.
Yeah, but... we'll see, like, I don't even know. It all also depends on my son. Like, it depends, like, on his character, what he's like. Like Laura and I can discuss all these things, but then we also have to see his personality and stuff. So like, who knows? What if he's like the type of person that would like do well in the
Yeah, in
school?
the school. That's my example all the time. Like, see Steph, my wife, Steph. So she did really well in
Yeah,
school.
and like Steph's amazing.
Yeah.
She's doing really great. So it's
Why not? So
it depends. It really depends.
I think for me, the problem lang is not not well, of course there's a problem with the system, but like it's a system that benefits a certain group of
Yeah,
people,
exactly.
but also alienates another
Yes.
huge group
Yes,
of people.
that is exactly Ken Robinson's point, where like it kind of really discriminates the rest of brilliant people who probably graduate thinking they're stupid and not good at anything.
Yeah, I mean, imagine like my school. I don't know if they still do that. Like when I was in high school, grade school even. That's when they started. 'Cause did you know, like, we were segregated. Like, section A was the smart guys.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I know.
Diba?
That is so bad. Same with us, but it was like color. Like section white, all the smart people.
Tama ba?
Section green, like the not exactly genius level, but they're like good
Oh, you guys
enough.
have tiers?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
it wasn't said, but like we could all obviously tell. Like all the section white people always had 90 plus scores.
No, I meant like, so you had like, so that you had the top, and then there was like a second and third and
Yeah,
fourth?
because we had like sections, 4 sections in our entire batch, and we were grouped by how smart we were,
Really?
how well we did. I mean, they wouldn't say like, okay, this is section white, and they're all gonna be. But it was obvious. I mean, like,
Well, to be fair with my school, well, they really said section A was for
they
the
didn't
smart
tell
people.
it to us, but then it was,
Okay, well,
of course you could tell.
it was very clear. Section A is the smart people, but they
Like, why did they
randomized.
do that? It was
But
so.
yeah, but they randomized everybody else from B to the D or E, whatever it was.
Oh.
They randomized everybody
Ours
else.
was like,
to be fair,
no, ours was really like.
really?
Yeah, and then there was like that one section where to all like problemado, like it was really terrible. Traumatizing. I really think that I was traumatized.
Yeah. which which kind of like brings me to, so despite you having been traumatized by school, you have chosen to be a teacher
Yeah.
and to open a school of your own. No?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't exactly call it a school.
Yeah, it's not a school nga, grade 1, grade 2,
Yeah.
whatever, but it's can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a studio. It's an art studio. So it's just
It's called Artastic.
Yeah, it's called Artastic. It wasn't something I planned. Like after college, I was looking for a job, like waiting to get a job. So I needed like money, because like I mentioned before, like in our family, when you're done with college, you're like on your own. So Lore, like I guess he could see that like I was comfortable with kids, and I did art like a lot. So he said like, why don't you just do art classes for like kids while waiting? So I did that. That was in 2012. And it's really different. Well, my vision and my goals for Artastic back then and now are really like really, really different. Like back then it was just like a means to get extra cash, and like my lessons were mostly centered on like what's fun that I can do with the kids for 2 hours, and it's really like evolved to something that I would say is like more meaningful to me now. So almost 8 years later, we have like toddler classes, like with Manu. Like I have my adults and teens, And then one of the more like important things that I would like to focus on is joining and organizing events where like my students get to like engage with the community. That's one of the things that I really want to focus on for Artastic
Through art, diba?
through art. Yeah, like what we did with Tubo Art
Yeah.
recently. That was really like fun and I think like beneficial for my students here.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, did you know the kanang? I taught kids for a while also, like
What? You
yeah,
did? Where?
in Madrid, teaching them English.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and then of course I had no experience.
Yeah. How old are they?
I think it was 4, 6, and 9, something like that. And then
Three kids.
no classes
Oh, okay.
like 4-year-olds,
Oh,
6-year-olds, and then
wow.
9-year-olds.
How many were they in your class? Per class?
I don't know, 5, 6,
Okay.
something like that.
That's not
They're
too
all
bad.
Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
And I remember so I didn't know how to speak Spanish. So my first day, I think these were the 4-year-olds, most of the youngest ones. And then, okay, guys, I'm just talking to them in straight English, going as fast as, I'm just talking normally.
Yeah.
All right, let's color these letters. And, there's a table in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And then by the time like 20 or 30 minutes passed, like a scene in like movies where you have like one kid who's actually doing something, and
Yeah.
then everybody else is just running around throwing stuff. And then that's what happened on my first day. So kids were throwing stuff at each other. There was like just one kid who was actually doing something.
Yeah.
And then, so the secretary, it was like a really small school. The secretary was forced to come down
Like
to
intervene.
yeah, like she shouted at all the kids, and then, so they finally sat down and everything. And then after my class was done, she went up to me, Carlo, you have to learn to control your class. And then,
Yeah.
I remember going home. I remember going home. I had to ask my Spanish roommates, okay, how do you say sit down in Spanish? Keep quiet. I asked her all of these things, Yeah, wow, it was hard. And then,
Yeah.
but at some point, you get the groove of it. And then I realized we were just playing,
Playing.
because I was teaching them English. So we were
Yeah.
just playing games
Yep.
the whole time. And eventually, even the older classes, my favorite ones were like, just get a card and then, what's this?
Yeah.
And then, it's a police. Because and then I found out that it's probably a lot easier to do that than just, police. Police.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I mean, you have to engage them. You can't just like. I mean, they're not. You can't just like talk to them.
You can't
and,
feed them information.
No, yeah, it doesn't work that way. Which is why, like, after doing this, I realized how important teachers are. Like, I teach a relatively fun subject, art. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to get wrong, or like it's hard to find a kid that won't enjoy it. So then I thought about teachers and how they teach things like math and science and like how do they make it, how it's such a big task to be able to teach it in a way where kids actually want to learn it. So like I really feel like if you run an institution, then your staff is like top of the list for the things you have to make sure that they're like good teachers.
Because I feel like, well, I would suspect a lot of teachers, they're probably just, in a way, very similar to my experience, thrown in the fire.
Yeah.
They're just put in front of a class and then they're expected to,
Yeah.
give knowledge somehow.
Yeah.
And
That's like another interesting thing to look into, I think, would be changing the way people teach their subjects,
yeah, I remember, like in college, so as I mentioned, I kind of struggled. But there was one class there were these two in the end two classes, the history class, and then typically I found in school, in high school, I found social studies or slash history really boring because they were just like,
Yeah.
okay, what date did
Yeah.
Jose Rizal die or something, and then it was really boring. Oh my god! And then, but then I had a history teacher, and then he would just basically tell stories
Yeah,
the
that's so
whole
cool.
class.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, diba? And then like chika chika ba, like you're having coffee with a person, and then they're just this is what
Yeah.
happened with
Yeah.
I'm
I could
I'm
see that being like really interesting and fun.
yeah, diba? And
Yeah.
then it's there's so much. The bar is so low. I think at least I don't know now because I'm not in school, but at least during my time, I felt like it was really low,
Yeah.
and it was so easy to just be remarkable as a teacher.
Yeah.
No, as long as you just get comfortable being in front of people. So, what's your experience like? Kanang running Artastics. You guys opened it in 2012. You mentioned that it's very different
Yeah.
from how it was, no? So
Yeah.
we're currently in Artastic. It's it's very colorful.
Yeah.
No? Um and then yeah, like si Mano really enjoyed your class.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think we have his artwork somewhere. I don't know, we moved, so I don't know where anything is now, but and we were hoping to bring Matty, my second, probably next year. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to talk to Steph.
Yeah.
But yeah, so can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so when I started out, it was really like heavy on um like the activities. Like as I grew, I started like seeing Artastic as like a school. So then I went through a phase where I was really like obsessed about like the technical aspects because also like this is what the parents were looking for.
What do you mean technical aspects?
Like enjoying like the shading, like making things
Okay.
realistic, like the being able to draw like really well, and I was like focused on that for a long time. And then after like I stumbled on Ken Robinson's work, I realized that like, and also through experience and seeing like how it affected like my students, um I realized that it's really not about, especially the age that I teach, because I like the chunk of my kids are between like toddlers to like I'd say about 9 or 10, and then I have like a few teens and like every once in a while an adult class. The age that I teach, they don't really, they're not they're not interested in the technical
Like
parts.
mastery is not the point.
Mastery is not what they're after, and it kind of, and I realized like also when I was growing up and when I was a kid doing art, I wasn't like that came later because I had learned to love art so much that I wanted to keep doing it and I wanted to keep like honing my skills. So the technical parts came later. Like I think that I polished that even like in college, I think. Like sometime in high school towards like college. But then when I was a kid, it was never about wanting to make things look real and realistic. It was just the process of it. So I kind of changed my lesson plans to focus more on what they're experiencing while they're doing it. So and also like through experience, like just being able to tell like what the capabilities are of kids a certain age, I learned like along the way. I didn't study, I wasn't in education.
Oh yeah.
So like everything I learned was really from experience and like hanging out with kids all the time. Yeah. So and like it's funny because I joke with my friends that like I see my like kid students more often than like
Your friend.
adults. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like and some of these kids have been with me like 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, and it's like kind of crazy. This like that's one of the thoughts that would really keep me up at night. Like it realize like how much time these kids are spending with me, and like what am I teaching them? You know what I mean? So yeah, like now I'm trying to from like the technical aspects and just like wanting to please the parents and like being able to show them like, oh, like look what your kid did, they're really good in art.
As you're balancing that a little bit.
Yeah, so from that I'm trying to make it so aside from maybe like the basic skills, I'm trying to use art as a tool for like creativity in general, where if they can learn how to think creatively and like problem solve creatively through art, then maybe they can use that skill in other areas like in math and science, whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, because you had this like in your talk, you had that riff on divergent thinkers.
yeah, that also blew my mind.
Yeah, can you talk? Can you just for the listener? Can you repeat
Yeah,
that?
so divergent thinking is it's a skill wherein it's a skill where an individual has the ability to think of multiple answers to a solution, right? So typically like a person, if given a problem, there's like a way they approach it, where an average person they're like in this realm of being able to tackle that problem. So like a simple example would be asking a person like a use for an object. Like in my talk, I used the paperclip example, which I picked from Ken Robinson's example in one of his talks. And he was saying, if you ask an average person, like, can you give me a use for a paperclip? An average person will give you about 15 to 20 answers. And then an above average person would give you like maybe 50 to 180. And then genius level would be like 200 and up. So scientists like develop this way of being able to test people for divergent thinking, and they did a test on like 1,500 subjects. They published this thing, so I'm sure it's like not just like someone, you know, it's legit. It was like done correctly.
It's like a paper somewhere.
Yeah. So they tested 1,500 kindergarteners, and it turned out that 98% of kindergarten children have the capability to have this skill. They're all
This genius divergent thinking.
Yeah, they're all like divergent thinkers. And then they did a test 5 years later, and then with the same subjects, and it had gone down by like 20 or 30%. And then 5 years again when they were like 13 or 15, and it went like even lower. So they started to wonder like what happened? Like what did these kids go through that kind of diminished their ability to have this skill? And they're saying it's because they got educated.
Quote unquote educated.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people like do the quote unquote sign on the
Yeah.
while talking in the podcast,
Sorry.
and I have to say quote unquote like
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah, so that's why his talk is do school skill creativity, because I think at some level to a big group of people it kind of does.
Yeah. So that's what you're trying to go against, like at least with Artastic also now, with your approach, with how you treat
Yeah.
the kids.
Well, not like
I also
go,
think like, well, sorry, what were you saying?
yeah, like not go against. Like I'm not like
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm just trying to provide a place where, you know, like kids can like do art and I can like teach them this creative skill, hopefully teach them this creative skill, or if they're good in art, be able to like express themselves like completely without like judgment or like someone telling them that art isn't important and it'll never, come to anything.
Which is what you hear a lot. Like I think our generation when we were
Yeah.
growing up,
Yeah.
that was my favorite. Like it's like yeah, makakwarta ka anak.
Starving artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then consider like so, you mentioned that you have kids and also an occasional adult also. So do you, based on your experience, do you see that difference in terms of
Yeah.
like divergent thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, my adult classes are really different from even like my teens. I mean, I see it a little bit lesser in teenagers, but um, I really do agree with Ken Robinson because I can see it all the time. Like, I do see it all the time. My example in Tropical Futures was like a blank piece of paper,
Oh yeah.
right? Like you give a kid, like no self-respecting kid would want to work on paper that has something on it. They're always like, no, like I want my like a clean slate, right? And like when kids look at a blank piece of paper, they just see possibility. Like they could do whatever they want with it. When you do that with an adult, they are so scared to make a mistake, or they're so scared that whatever they're gonna put on the paper is gonna get judged, or they're so scared that like it turns out they're not good at whatever it is they're trying to do, that it just like paralyzes them from doing anything. And I think that that like attitude comes from like a lot of it comes from like schooling, because like in schools they teach you there's only one answer, like tests, there's only one answer to a test. You can't like argue that this multiple choice B might also be a possibility because this and this and this. You're taught that like there's only one answer to every question, like problem, and if you don't get it right, you're wrong, right? So like with art, like like I see it being carried over in like a simple thing like drawing. Like I've had adult students and it'll take them like 15-20 minutes to even like have the courage to put their hand down on paper with a pencil and draw.
Oh, even like that first line.
Yeah,
So
even
they're
just
still thinking
they're
it out
so
pa.
like caught up in like, and I mean I don't blame them for it. So like in my adult classes, we always have like a buffer where I just like I tell them to like forget all like technical aspects, like try to get them in the framework where like this is just like for fun, the way a kid would look at doing art.
You know, I keep thinking, for some reason, the whole it kind of goes, for some reason it goes back to me through like enjoyment, like in a way. Uh, I don't know if this is true. Like I read somewhere that somebody asked Michael Jordan, for
Yeah,
example, like how are you gonna, how, let's say I'm a parent and you want your kid to become really good at basketball. And what
yeah.
was Michael Jordan's uh, advice? And then I remember hearing it at the time and I was surprised, but he just said like just make sure they enjoy the game.
Yeah. Yep.
And then for some it just kept coming, that example just kept coming back to my head as you were talking.
Yeah.
No, um, and we've been talking for over an hour now.
Oh
No,
shoot, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's a good place to end. So just um, to recap, we schools are bad. Um,
No, they're not bad.
don't send your children to schools.
No, I think just, like if there's like, I'm sure you have listeners who are parents who have kids in schools. I think that if you have a kid in school, as a parent, you have a huge responsibility also to like make sure that your kids can think for themselves, like um I'm not saying like schools are bad.
I'm joking.
Yeah. I don't think it's a good thing to say. But yeah, like it's important for a parent to know this also, so you can kind of like, teach your kids and like maybe take off the burden that they have in schools and like putting so much pressure on like getting good grades and stuff. And like maybe focus on figuring out what they're good at and focusing on that.
Okay, I think that's a
Yeah.
good place to
Yeah.
end. Is there anything that you want to add that we may have missed?
No, not really.
Yeah, come to Mr. Griddle on weekends.
Yeah, backyard sessions.
Backyard sessions.
Every Friday, we're hoping.
Friday? Saturday? Friday?
Friday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
Yeah. Where can people find you online? Where can they find Artastic?
Artastic, our Instagram is Hello Artastic, and then our Facebook is Artastic Art Enrichment Program.
Okay, and then Artastic is right here in what is Banilad Road,
Yeah.
above Mr. Griddle. Are you
Yeah.
gonna put a signage?
Yeah, I think I have to. I haven't gotten around to that. Yeah, but I will.
Okay. Where can people find you personally online or
They
Artastic
just
lang?
if you message Artastic on Instagram or Facebook, like it's me, so I'll be the one answering.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks, Han.
thanks, Scar.
All right. It was a great conversation with Hannah Martinez-Florendo. Thank you, Hannah, for that conversation. Usually when Hannah and I talk, we end up talking about our kids. That's what parents do. But in a way, this conversation was still about our kids, but in this larger, bigger framework of school. So yeah, that was fun. Thanks, Han. Thank you, Cube Gallery, for sponsoring the podcast. I've already recorded all of the interviews for 2019, so I'll be working on the 2020 calendar. So aside from booking guests for interviews, we're also looking for sponsorship partners for the podcast. So if you work in a company or own a business that would like to partner with us, send me an email at info@032.com, or if you know me on Facebook, just message me. Sponsorship partners that could benefit the 032 Conversations listeners usually do best. Basically, if you work in a company or a business that caters to creative people, to the creative community, then it might be a good fit. So, yeah. Email info@032.com for sponsorship inquiries. Again, order at Assembly Online. You get 20% off on 032 merchandise. Use the promo code CONVERSATIONS. That's Conversations with an S. The music from this podcast is Piano March by Audionautics. And again, thank you to our patrons on patreon.com/032. Your support is very important. So if you've listened to a lot of these interviews and you want to give back somehow, then patreon.com/032 is the best way to do so. Also, if you're low on cash, I totally get it. But you still want to help. You don't want to buy 032 merchandise, or you don't want to be a patron, but you think what we do is important, then please consider sharing this episode online. Every little thing helps. Okay. It's almost Christmas. That's going to be hectic. Okay, let's go. Next week, new episode, Tuesday. Bye.